Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when you get to sit at the feet of a Canadian icon of cinema and talk shop, you just do it. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do. You can subscribe to the podcast. Hit that like button, give us the old 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. We're pretty much on all services. We're at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, pretty much everywhere. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, do not hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, and we're on the Instagram, as the kids call it, at, well, where else would we be? We're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to write about it and watch it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, this is a treat. This is a treat beyond treats. We had the unique pleasure of sitting down with the one and only Guy Maddin, one of Canada's foremost cinema filmmakers, cinema masters. And because we were talking about the new transfer from the original negative of his first film ever called Tales from the Gimli Hospital, but it's a Redux because there's an additional scene, and it's a little bit outsider, it's a little bit avant-garde, it's interesting, but it's again, it's a weird little duck, but I think it's an important little duck. It finally got to play at TIFF, and it's now available with our friends over at Hollywood Sweets, both playing on the channels and available on demand until the end of this month. Those guys support Canadiana, and we love them for it because they got this and they got something else too, which we're going to be talking about on another episode coming up. But I don't want to spoil too much for you. But otherwise, like I said, if you have not had the chance to check out this film by Guy Maddin, please do. It really is an interesting little film, and check out all of his work because he's the kind of person who deserves to have his stuff checked out. But before you do that, enjoy our talk with Guy, because between you and me, it is a darn good one, and we'll see you soon. You know, when you get to sit at the feet of a Canadian icon of cinema and talk shop, you just do it. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do. You can subscribe to the podcast. Hit that like button, give us the old 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. We're pretty much on all services. We're at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, pretty much everywhere. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, do not hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, and we're on the Instagram, as the kids call it, at, well, where else would we be? We're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to write about it and watch it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, this is a treat. This is a treat beyond treats. We had the unique pleasure of sitting down with the one and only Guy Maddin, one of Canada's foremost cinema filmmakers, cinema masters. And because we were talking about the new transfer from the original negative of his first film ever called Tales from the Gimli Hospital, but it's a Redux because there's an additional scene, and it's a it's a little bit outsider. It's a little bit avant-garde. It's interesting, but it's again, it's a weird little duck, but I think it's an important little duck. It finally got to play at TIFF, and it's now available with our friends over at Hollywood Suites, both playing on the channels and available on demand until the end of this month. Those guys support Canadiana, and we love them for it because they got this and they got something else too, which we're going to be talking about on another episode coming up. But I just don't want to spoil too much for you. But otherwise, like I said, if you have not had the chance to check out this film by Guy Maddin, please do. It really is an interesting little film, and check out all of his work because he's the kind of person who deserves to have his stuff checked out. But before you do that, enjoy our talk with Guy, because between you and me, it is a darn good one, and we'll see you soon. Just first, just to kick it off officially, I mean, obviously, I think like Steve said in the intro for your film, you finally got this film played at TIFF.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. And like I said to him, I'm not so sure it was a mistake to turn it down in the first place. So, although Piers has mentioned so many times while introducing me at the premieres of subsequent movies that he'll never live down turning down Gimli. But watching it while working on it, on this restoration, I was struck by how imminently turned downable it's its own ferocious thing, whatever it is.
Well, it is
it's never been easy to
fascinating duck, to be sure. But I mean, I guess that kind of dovetails into my question. Like, how does the ball get rolling on a restoration like this? Do they call you? Do you call them? Where does sort of this all start?
Yeah, they in this case was just Ron Mann, a guy I knew he was a film distributor, and I've seen his films that he's made as a director, but I didn't know he was getting into this side project of restoring films and tapping into some available Telefilm money and other sponsors, and just made it his mission to take some Canadian films that he's about my age, I think a couple years younger, but films that he has long loved and which he feels have disappeared. And the only chance for them to be seen properly in art houses or in streaming is if they exist in proper 4K formats. So he's just made it a mission, and he's done a number of them. I can't remember all the titles now, but it's available on. I could send you a list of some of the titles he's
that actually would be interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. They're like Hookers on Davie Street and things going way back,
Okay.
Really fun stuff. So yeah, he just phoned me one day. I think it was 2020. I was living in a basement in Toronto, a little bit down in the dumps, like living in a basement will put you, teaching at U of T during COVID times. And I was just teaching remotely, even though I'd gone to Toronto to live there because everyone was optimistic I could teach in person, but that was called off almost immediately. And so I sat in a basement on a couch, taught a class. Then when the class was over, since it's so performative and exhausting teaching, I would just slump over 90 degrees and have a way too long a nap. And then one day the phone rang and awakened me from my nap with this great news that Ron wanted to restore Gimli Hospital. He wanted to restore my next two features after that as well, and the first short I made before Gimli Hospital. So I was really excited, and it was just one of the rare sort of out of the blue bolts of great news that I've had because, I don't have any delusions of grandeur, I don't think, but I was sort of hoping that my films would outlive me a bit, but a lot of them had been sidelined well before I have been, and so this felt good. There's a chance my movies might outlive me now, and that's a good feeling.
So that dovetails into the next question. I mean, are the negatives for something like this in the wind, or is there like a Guy Maddin vault somewhere where you have it all?
I've donated the TIFF library. TIFF may have turned down Gimli Hospital, but the TIFF library invited it with open arms a number of years ago, and I've been storing all my negatives, positives, clippings, writings, everything, scripts at the TIFF library. And so I have a collection there. I think Adam Agoyan does too, and some other prominent Canadian filmmakers. It's been a great deal, and I just feel it's safe there. And then if someone at the time, I remember thinking this like 18 years ago or something, that in the future, if anyone wanted to run new prints of my movies, they would know where to go for the negatives. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So it's great. I love it. And every year, as a matter of fact, I have a little stack in my den where I place things earmarked for the TIFF library. So everything will be there.
Well,
I've learned to be a little more discriminating. I no longer put shopping lists and laundry lists there, and my, impressions of losing streaks of the Minnesota Twins and the Toronto Blue Jays and things like that. But I think my diaries are there with all their damning opinions and all sorts of things to be released, like Pandora box style, after my death.
Now, I mean, do you get to be hands-on in the process? Because, I mean, obviously this is a Redux. So, I mean, what inspired the Redux? Or was it just a question of being able to be hands-on with it as the process was going on?
Yeah, Ron had every intention of letting me be hands-on since I was alive. And I was curious because the film never really got a proper printing in the first place. It was a black and white film that was always printed on color stock by a lab that was too lazy to switch over to black and white film when this pipsqueak me came around with my exposed footage. So that resulted in a higher contrast look, or just more detail was lost in blacks that weren't that interesting, though, just sort of murky, like black coffee rather than deep, dark, cinematic blacks, So I just wanted to see what was missing, the detail that was missing. I put a lot of love into building the sets and things like that. And often, but because I wasn't a great cinematographer when it came to lighting, often just had one light going on. Often when things graded off to black, I just assumed there was no information there. But when I got to visit in person at the color grading process, sorry, this is all technical talk. I'll try to be enthusiastic. No, but all of a sudden, long dead and forgotten relatives were starting to emerge from the shadows. People I'd talked into being in the film, but who never got a proper f-stop reading on my light meter, re-emerged all of a sudden, visible to the world for the first time since they died 25, 35 years ago. So that was exciting. Also, there was a chance to include a strange scene I shot. One of the lead actors in the film, Michael Gottli, in the mid 1990s, he hit a moose on his way driving back from Toronto to Winnipeg and was gravely injured. He never did walk again, and he got really severe amnesia, and he lost his ability to speak clearly. And I was visiting him to try to cheer him up, see how he was doing. One day, I kept hearing reports from the stand-up comedy community in Winnipeg he was a member of, that he could sure use cheering up. So it just struck me that there were some cast members from the original Gimli Hospital around, that we could shoot a so-called deleted scene from the movie 11 years after the movie had premiered. And so we got together in 1999. On the very day, it turns out, that John Kennedy Jr. died. And we got together, the cast, Angela Heck and Brent Neal and Michael Gottli and I, and we shot a little something. And I called it a deleted scene, but I wasn't sure where to put it. But when Ron called me, I thought, oh man, this is my chance to sort of keep my word that I gently gave to Michael, who subsequently passed away, to include this deleted scene. So it actually fits. And strangely, everyone is 11 years older. They don't look so radically different that anyone would notice necessarily, but just strangely, they look 11 years older for a few minutes, and then they're younger again. and it's sort of in keeping with the fever dream qualities I remember going for when I first picked up a camera anyway. So that's I guess the sole content of the Redux aspect, the revisiting of it. Other than that, it's just a matter of color grading it the way it was always, the way I would have always loved it to have looked, and then and then this odd scene, and then I know the movie wasn't the most popular movie in the world. It had a little bit of a cult following, and it had a great distributor in America. Ben Barenholtz is the person who sort of, in a very unique way, massaged Eraserhead into prominence by famously just playing at 1 midnight a week in New York, and placing a single line ad for it in the personal columns in New York, in the Village Voice or something like that. And so I got Ben Barenholtz to distribute it, and I was so honored because he was a legend, and he had sort of hoped this would be another Eraserhead. It isn't. There's just so much personal urgency in Eraserhead, and Eraserhead's one of the movies that inspired me to make movies, but this isn't Eraserhead. It has lots of personal things in it, lots of Icelandic Canadian stuff that I grew up with and which drove me crazy, but it doesn't have that personal urgency that being a father in a marriage with an unplanned pregnancy, a marriage to someone you don't know, that sort of situation can produce. And strangely, I did live through that, and that's why Eraserhead spoke so directly to me, but the movie gave me the permission to do it. But I'm sorry, I've just totally lost track of what question you asked.
Please. It's quite all right, but I mean, it dovetails into something else I wanted to ask you, because sure. I mean, obviously, we live really in a unique day and age when it comes to cinema, because I mean, on one end, there's the demand for the spectacle and the Marvel and the this and the that and everything that goes to streaming and everything that gets buried, and then people don't see it and they forget about it. But on the other side of the spectrum, there's places that you've worked with, like Criterion. There's physical media labels, obviously, like Criterion, like Canadian International Pictures, which are giving sort of an extended life to works from people like you. And I'm kind of curious, how do you think sort of the division of the film industry that we're kind of seeing right now has given your material maybe a bit more of an extended life than maybe you would thought was even possible?
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's changed. I'm a bit of a dilettante student historian of the medium in the first place, and I've often marveled at how quickly things must have changed for participants in the industry around the peak of the silent era period, the sudden conversion to talkies, the sudden growth of sophistication in filmmaking around that time. And I often wondered, how did people even hang on for dear life with things changing so quickly? But we've been going through a pretty rapid seismic changes ourselves, all of us, journalists, filmmakers, industry people, the last few years. And gosh, who can even guess where it's going? I really admire Criterion people. Peter Becker, who runs the company, has really done a beautiful job of keeping on brand while reinventing or readjusting what they do. That the Criterion channel is just necessary to have, but they still have these boutique collectible discs. And but the actual industry itself, I guess I'm feeling it's so easy just to take a stance against Marvel movies and everything, but I'm afraid I'll just have to take the easy way. I can't watch them anymore. And they can't be good for anybody. They're about as good for you as like Instagram and Facebook are, so they're an everyday part of our lives, but I don't know how healthy they are for us in the long run. We'll see. Free market economy, etc. Although maybe Marvel movies are the culprits behind those chips planted in our blood. And how come no one is saying that anyway?
That's a good point. No, you're absolutely right. But I mean, it's one of those things where it feels to me, not just as a journalist, but also as a fan, that it's getting more and more important for anyone who wants to be in this industry to either make a film or to sort of work in it in some way, shape, or form, needs to have a better understanding of curation.
Yeah.
It feels like now more than ever, it's so important to understand what happened in the past, to understand how we're moving
Yeah.
forward into the future.
Right. This is a lament, I guess, people have been making since, Ovid's time. I know Ovid wrote poems about summer road construction, just complaining about why are the roads always under construction in the summer. But maybe he's been complaining, we've been complaining about teenagers for a few millennia, and maybe we've been complaining about the most recent generation's inability to understand the past. Maybe it's not so bad, but definitely it helps if the leading artists anyway understand where we're coming from, and then by some sort of unconscious contagion, the broader, less caring people who are churning out stuff get a secondhand understanding of the past just by aping things. I'm not sure. But you won't get an argument from me. I think it's important to know where we're coming from, in both in film and in everything else, to sort of steer ourselves, or at least anticipate where we're going. Having said that, luckily there are still film curators. I'm good friends with some at various cinematochs and museums around the world, and so I guess I'm not exactly just a typical citizen that way. I feel less pessimistic that everything is just going to hell. It does seem like curation, actually, if anything, is getting there's much more choice of films, far more diverse stuff dealing with cultures that were unavailable to us filmically in the quantities that we get now. Recently, just until recently, this curation was meant, curating the canon over and over again and stuff. And I even Criterion has really broadened recently. Its mission statement probably is something like changing the canon, shifting the canon, bringing a new, altering an angle of regard concerning canons, and of course, their catalog has gotten enormously more diverse, even just in the last 2 years. So, and I know my curator friends at the Wexner Center in Los Angeles and at MoMA are unbelievably smart film people. And I don't know, it feels like for people who care about that sort of stuff, and and there'll be people who care, I think. I like to think so. It's hard to wrest influence away from TikTok, of course, because it's just an outrageously addictive and even rapidly replacing Google as a search engine. But I don't know. I was a TV addict as a kid, and then a baseball addict. I just wasted so much time, at least the same amount of time video gamers playing video games, but at least video games build up certain strengths in your brain, your eye-hand coordination and everything. They may make you a little bit sociopathic, but I was coming out of a wasteland of squandered youth when suddenly I discovered film and wanted to, avidly, ardently needed to know everything I could about it all of a sudden. And especially when I got bit by the actual filmmaking bug, I wanted to go back and find filmmakers that I was in sync with, that I could copy. And, just the same old bohemian story told over and over again, paint among painters, sculptors, performance artists, filmmakers. When you start out, you have your favorites and you want to imitate them, and then you discover you can't imitate them very well because you're not a good mimic, but you have something to say and it comes out in your own words. And next thing you know, you have your own style and and then someone says something horrible to you and hurts your feelings or angers you, and you strike back with something and refine your style even more. And I guess that's what happened to me. I owe it all to peers turning down Gimli Hospital all those years ago.
No, but I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, I mean, I'm kind of curious, for you diving back into Gimli Hospital like this, Is the creative payoff ultimately for you, knowing that with this new restoration, there might be some 18-year-old filmmaker out there in the world who gets to see it and goes, hey, that was weird. I like that.
Yeah, it is, and every now and then there is, I have reason to believe there is someone like that. I hope so. Yeah, that would be the ultimate payoff. If on my deathbed, a bunch of utter strangers, teenaged and 20-something and 30-something-year-old strangers gathered around and said, thank you. We owe our highly successful filmmaking careers to watching Tales from the Gimli Hospital when we were 10. I'm not sure. It is one of those narcissistic dreams one has. I think if I got turned on by the underground cinema that I did get turned on by, I suppose there's a chance. We'll see. Gosh, you've just put into words something I've never dared utter to myself even, but that would be nice to find out that you've influenced somebody, because that is one of the reasons you make these things. You make them for audiences, hypothetical ones, and maybe they're just, 200 identical versions of yourself sitting in the dark somewhere, but it's pretty nice to know you've actually reached somebody. And of course, I could never respect those people, but it is one of the reasons you make the movie.
All right, now last question, and it's a loaded one, but it's one I have to ask. I'm kind of curious. Can you think back to you as a younger man? Like, was there one movie or one moment in a movie that you remember that had the light bulb go off for you that say, okay, I want to do this?
Yeah, there is. It's Luis Buñuel's L'Âge d'Or, where there was no continuity. There was just sort of acceptable levels of technical craftsmanship. There were a bunch of non-actors, just Buñuel's friends, but what he had was a bunch of scene ideas that he claimed, fibbing as usual, claimed that had nothing to do with each other. But I remember just seeing this film that was so primitively assembled, made in 1930, mostly silent, a part talkie in French. And I recognized myself in that film and its rudimentary plots. There's a love story in there starring Gaston Madot, perhaps the best actor in the film. Well, easily the best actor in the film. He's a Jean Renoir veteran. He's in Rules of the Game. But he plays the male lead, just a hot-headed sort of id, a libido in patent leather shoes with patent leather hair. And he just is the young man I was, sexually immature, petulant, aggrieved, angry, and pathetic, and hilarious. And I don't know, when I saw this, it was so exciting that way back in 1930, someone had cobbled together with virtually no filmmaking experience. It was Buñuel's second movie only. A film that transcended time and was hilarious to me, but also just, the light went on. I felt maybe I can make something like this. I'll never be able to make something as good as L'Âge d'Or, and I haven't. But using that strategy of emboldened me to start approaching friends in Winnipeg who'd never acted before or who had just acted on the local community theater stage, and saying, I just say to them, let's make a movie, and they were up for it, and I just tried. I was actually overconfident considering what came out.
Well, you know what, Guy? I mean, just thank you for the work, because and just especially in seeing this film, like I said, it is a bit of an odd duck, but just in seeing it in sort of the totality of all the other stuff that you've done, it makes a lot of sense too. And
yeah,
for me, it was a joy to watch, and just, again, keep up the good work, and thank you for the time, man.
Thanks so much. It's thanks for asking such nice questions and letting me blather on. I got to learn to give more concise answers. Yes, no.
We're no, trust me, we're podcasting. I want you to blather, please.
Okay, cool.
But
all right. Well, thank you so much, David. And
absolutely.
And keep up the great work on your end.
I'll do my best. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.